Today, on episode 35 of the Fit Stoic podcast, other people's opinions and your mental fortress, we'll explore how the abuse we suffer from the opinions of others is our own doing. And I'll share a funny story from my childhood. All right, welcome to the show. I'm Corey Samuelson. Today is chapter 28 of the Gymchiridion. I'll just get right into it. Begin quote. You wouldn't choose to be physically abused by another, but it can happen. However, the mental abuse you suffer from the words and opinions of others is your own doing. Your mental fortress is impregnable if you build it that way. End quote. When I was quite young, I imagine I was about 7 or 8, my dad had taken my mom, myself, and my younger sister, who's younger by a couple of years, roughly, out to fish and camp. And at one point, my dad was calling to me, either because we were packing up to leave or he just wanted to know where I was. Whatever the reason, he wanted me within eyesight, and I was off doing something in the bush. And what I remember doing to hurry myself along to get to where my dad was calling for me was that I ran along a beaver dam or something like that was across a stream. It was just a tangle of different sized branches and twigs and small logs, and it took all of my balance and skill and agility to get myself across that. And then when I got to my dad, I remember what he said to me was, "You're just like a moose." And my little heart was just filled with pride, because obviously a moose is fast and agile and able to keep its balance and all kinds of really good things. And for years and years and years, that was kind of a memory for me that I really cherished. And remember, this is when I'm imagining again, about 7 or 8 years old. I might have even been younger. And at one point, I think I'm, again, not sure of the age here, but I was in my mid-20s. So I'm probably, let's say, 25 years old. And just my nature, I'm quite nostalgic. So I think about childhood memories and things from the past. And I enjoy doing that. And that memory of my dad saying that I was just like a moose came back to me. And all of a sudden, for some reason, whatever my state of mind happened to be, all of a sudden I thought, wait a second, I think he insulted me. And it occurred to me that what he actually meant by "you're just like a moose" was that for such a little person, for such a small child, I probably was making quite a racket as I was running along those twigs and branches and whatnot from the beaver dam as I was making my way toward him. And I laugh about that now, because all this time I had interpreted those words, "you're just like a moose," as something that gave me joy, that gave me kind of a warm feeling, and maybe even influenced the way I thought about my own athletic ability. If I was young enough and I was just establishing my belief in what my body could do. And it may well have been a foundational belief that I carried and that I used as a foundation to expand my athletic ability. I may be reading more into that little event than it warrants. That may have had very little to do with it. But either way, I did cherish that memory, and I thought about it quite often. And that's the funny thing. I misinterpreted it. Or at least I think I did, because when I actually talked to my dad about it, he didn't remember. He, obviously in his life, that little moment, that little 3-second interlude that we had there in our relationship didn't have the impact. He just said it off the cuff, and then he went about whatever it was that he was doing and thinking about. What I'm getting at is that the interpretation there, that in this case, it wasn't the harm that I experienced as a result of his opinion of me being like a moose. I actually took it the other way. And whether it was an insult or it wasn't, it's not to be confirmed because my dad doesn't remember. But I actually took strength from that and joy, and it added to my experience of life in a way that I wouldn't have if at that young age I'd actually perhaps taken it as I imagine he meant it, as a bit of an insult, or at least as a playful little jab. Imagine that I had taken it the wrong way, or even the right way, but we'll leave that for now. Imagine I had taken it more to heart as I was being criticized for being too noisy, too rambunctious, too something else, something negative. If I'd taken it, instead of being something that filled me with pride and with joy, that I'd taken it as, you should think worse of yourself here, son. You're like a moose and you should be more like a bobcat or a cougar or something like that. You know, whatever my young mind at that time might have dreamt up. And I went into myself and I actually started to think, yeah, I'm not athletic or whatever it might have been. Obviously, as a child, my critical thinking skills here that I'm applying to this as a memory wouldn't be there. So I might not have been as able to combat that negative, or at least what we're pretending here is that I would have taken as a negative comment or a negative opinion on my ability to run quietly and whatnot across a beaver dam. But either way, my point is that opinions and what other people think are not facts, in that they can be interpreted and they can be accepted or rejected. Opinions vary within individuals themselves from day to day, and they definitely vary from person to person. So some people like vanilla as a flavor. Some people think, wow, that's really boring. And neither one of them is objectively a correct opinion. They are merely, hey, that's the way I feel about it. That's the way I think about it. And you can do with it what you want. Now, sometimes the intent of the person who is offering an opinion, especially if it is on our character or our skills or our abilities, may be to actually inflict harm or to cause disturbance or to just make somebody feel bad about that. And this is where making your own mental fortress impregnable, and any harm that someone may even intend for us to feel actually ends up being our choice whether to accept it or not. Eleanor Roosevelt is attributed to have said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." She nailed it, because in those instances where someone is saying you should feel bad about this, you don't need to accept it. In the end, no one can really make you feel anything like guilt or shame or sadness. And to feel, in Eleanor Roosevelt's example, to feel inferior. And just like the quote from the Gymchiridion, the last line, it is an impenetrable or an impregnable fortress if you build it that way. And that's up to you. I would even go so far as to say that if at any point something gets beyond the defenses, if something does get past it, it's not too late. You can just grab whatever it was that broke the defense and then throw it back over the wall so that you keep the interior of this fortress pristine, exactly the way that you want it. And then adjust, build the wall a little bit better, maybe a little taller, maybe in some other way, making it so that that specific, in quotes, attack won't be able to get through. If you don't like the term fortress or, that offense-defense thinking, you can substitute something that works more in line with what you consider excellent for yourself. In this case, it might be sanctuary, like an inner sanctuary, or just maybe an inner gymnasium, which is something that I use personally. Somewhere where you can go to work things out. Another thing might be refuge, or just an inner space that is untouchable and is unbreachable, and that others' opinions and thoughts and how they want you to think about things is up to you, where you can retreat and go inside to really do some deep thinking about your own experience and what you want to do with it when you are offered things that might, in most people's experience, cause harm. This ties into Marcus Aurelius, which I will read right now. This is from Book 4, Chapter 7. Begin quote. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. End quote. So that is very straightforward. If you choose not to feel harmed, then you haven't been harmed. It's as simple as that. And that's the point, the main point of this chapter and this episode. The harm that you do feel, in the end, is your choice to feel harmed. This is the power of self-control. You can choose your experience regardless of the circumstances. It takes practice and it takes dedication. It can be done. Making those choices more and more consistently is a matter of practice and putting in that effort and having that intention, so that in the end, the potential of that Stoic sage is within us all. And that's the path that you can choose to walk. It's not a matter of arriving at a specific destination. It's a matter of simply staying on the path and making progress along it. Thanks for spending time with me today. If you like what you heard, please do share it with someone that you believe might like it too. This is Corey. Whatever your obstacle, operate with excellence.